It's the 1-year anniversary since I quit my job, and I wanted to make this video today just unscripted, talking about the last 2 years, the year since I quit my job and then the year leading up to that for anybody that's interested. So if you're not interested in that, you're just interested in lending, jump back in next week. There'll be more lending videos then, but I just want to talk about the last 2 years. So 2 years ago, pretty much to the date, is when I started actively trying to get into investing. We started with buying a house for ourselves, right? Doing a house hack, as they call it. We bought the house sight unseen, found an awesome realtor that helped us find something that we thought would work. And funny enough, 2 years later, it has by far been the best investment we've ever made, even though we didn't see it. We had never bought a house before, never invested in anything. But that's what got us started. And when we bought that house, I realized just how possible it was coming from, living in our van for the prior, year plus. To being able to jump in and buy a house was obviously a really cool and amazing thing. And so we bought that house and we were just kind of trying to figure out, like, what does it look like? Like, what does the normal life look like? Are we supposed to, the path that people gave was like, oh, you're supposed to keep buying houses, right? So I was trying to figure out what it would look like to keep buying houses. And to be honest, it's kind of difficult, especially when you're young and trying to figure stuff out. Like the real estate investor path is a pretty tough one. And very daunting, right? It goes from, like, I don't know, trying to decide if you should add bacon to your burger to, like, should I buy this $500,000 house? Like, it's not the same realm as before. So a lot to figure out. And somehow I don't know what to chalk it up to other than kind of luck, but somehow I just decided that we needed to learn more from other people and actually pay for it, which up until that point I had never done in my life. So it's not like I was, all one of those people that's just like all in, invest in myself. Not at all. Had never spent any money on myself, but I spent the money to join the sub 2 community because I saw the ability to buy houses quicker and get creative, which, like, coming from an engineering background, I loved the idea of creativity and solving problems. That's like what I've always done. And so being able to, like, take that and put it into the real estate world was a really cool possibility for me. And so that's really what intrigued us. And, it's funny because I hear the phrase, like, sell what you want and then give what you need, right? That's definitely what happened with that community. It was like we were being sold the idea of going out and buying a bunch of properties, and funny enough, we really haven't done that. But what we didn't realize we needed was just a community of other people that were ambitious, that were on the same path. And not everybody was like that, but it only takes a few, right? It only takes a few people. And coming from, the college background, and then more specifically the background we had when we lived in our van and kind of just traveled around, did whatever, was very different than a background of people that are, like, on the grind, ambitious. And I think both are good in their own right. But it was definitely a huge difference to get involved in that community. And so I went from knowing nothing about investing to, thinking I knew probably way more than I did, but also just having a clearer vision, because I could all of a sudden see, like, if you don't get involved in communities like that, you just see, like, a path for the most part. It's just like you level up in your job, whatever. Everybody knows the 9-to-5 thing. And, although I can't control everything in my life for sure, that's something that I definitely felt like I could have more control over. It was like, let's not just sit around and hope for the best, and just do what we can. And that was, a real transitionary period, was seeing all these people that, like, were showing what was possible and all of the different things that are possible, was honestly just so eye-opening. And so the first year from when we bought that house, we joined the community right when we bought the house. We bought it and I was like, I want to buy another one. Don't know how. That was the trigger. That was mid-July of 2022. And so for the next year, crazy time. We had just moved to Jacksonville, Florida. We got our jobs, my wife and I, and we bought the house and we joined the community all in the same, like, 2 weeks, literally. So lots going on. But I had started my job and I loved it. I was like, I want to, move up the ladder, blah, blah, blah. It was a small company, so I had more ability to do that. So it was really cool. And, I think a lot of times it just takes what I would call, like, pattern interrupts to really push you in different directions or push you over the edge. And so for that first year, I was basically operating under the understanding that I loved my job and I just wanted to create like additional income or create wealth in the future. And so I wasn't really treating it like desperately at all. Like it wasn't like I need money now. It was like I just wanted to learn how to have the ability to make money. That was really all it was. So I tried a lot of different things. I tried some cash wholesaling stuff. I tried looking into buying apartment buildings. I tried all sorts of stuff, and I didn't make any money, but I learned a lot, and I got to meet different people along the way. And I eventually landed on wholesaling creative deals. And the only reason I did was because it was just what finally worked. And honestly, it was the thing that I saw people that I felt were similar to me doing. And I'm very much under the impression that if other people can do it, I can too. And so I just kind of jumped on that and followed down that path. And that was in like maybe April or May of 2023 that I got started doing that. And at the same time that I started to get involved in that, I started to meet more people, and I actually had the opportunity. There was an event at the end of May in 2023 in Phoenix, Arizona. We lived in Jacksonville, Florida. There was an event where I knew a lot of high level people were going to be there, and the event cost a ton of money. So I kind of like a few days before it happened, I decided to just book a ticket out there, a few days notice, and just try and go meet the people that were at the event. Because I figure even if I can't go to the event, if all those people are in one place, then I can just go talk to said people, right? So I just went out there. I literally did not know a single human being. I did not get a place to stay. I didn't do anything. If anybody knows me when I travel, I'm very random. And so I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just knew there would be high level people there, and I wanted to not be so isolated just in Jacksonville, but really like branch out and meet people and see what other people were doing, because that's where I get my best ideas and stuff. So I went out to Phoenix with absolutely no plan. And when I got there, I got invited by somebody to stay in their house for free so that I didn't have to sleep in my car, which was the original plan. Shout out to Vanessa. She's amazing and gave me a room at her house. And then I met one of my closest friends now, Gage Garber, while I was there. The reason I connected with him was because he too was new to Phoenix. So it was like he was kind of just trying to figure things out, and so was I. So perfect fit there. Still one of my closest friends. So I met people like that. And I just I started getting connected with people and again, pattern interrupts, right? So like I was starting to not enjoy my job, and I think I was looking for what else I could be doing. And that's why I made that snap decision to fly all the way to Phoenix, but I didn't know like what the plan was. Like I didn't have a goal. And so, other than just connecting with people. But by the time I was leaving, people were asking like, when are you quitting your job? When are you doing this thing full time? And I was like, I don't even make any money. Like I had never made $1. I was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But it planted a seed, right? And that was at the end of May. And crazy enough, one of the things I want to bring up in this video is like that seed that was planted in my head, that was all it took to really get my gears turning and start thinking like, what are the other options? What are the possibilities? What could I do right now to really change things? And that was like May 25th of 2023. And I put in my notice to quit my job 4 weeks later, which is crazy. In my head, I had like toyed with the idea of quitting my job like eventually. But I know a lot of people who have said that years and years ago that have never done it. And so I met the right people to help me pull the trigger on that. And so I put in my notice in June. I stayed for another month, which was a mistake. But my last day on the job was July 21st of 2023. So it's been right at a year now that I've left. And although, that first year, I think it's overlooked too much for people that are listening to this, for people that know me. So many people, it's like a classic joke now, but it's like, oh, how did it happen so fast? But in that first year, everything I tried, I went 100%. Everything I tried. I built multiple teams of people. I worked every single night. I had an hour drive to and from work, and I would schedule calls with real estate agents and brokers and other people on that drive. So I never got I honestly kind of hated it. I never got to just enjoy my drive to and from work and just like listen to music or something. I was always on the phone working. I would get up before work and answer messages and like plan out my day. When I got home from work, I would respond to everything and plan out the next day, which is even more important, honestly, planning that out the day before. And I did that for the first year. I literally did not make $1, like nothing. I was just learning. But people discount how important it is to have that stage of learning, because none of that was wasted. Like, I didn't make $1 that year, but not a single bit of that time was wasted. I was learning stuff the whole time. So then when I got to quitting my job, I still hadn't really made any money. I had just broken through and made my first couple of dollars lending money, doing transactional lending on earnest money. And that was like the first little bit, but we're talking like, you know, a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s. So I was just touching the surface. But the crazy thing, and you know, I can say this with full confidence now too, is that I just had this realization that like I knew what to do. Like I saw other people making money. I had spent that year building everything up to where I was at the point where I knew what to do to make money. And it's a crazy feeling, because it's like, if I ran out of money tomorrow, the world wouldn't end. I know what to do. And that was how I felt in that moment, was like, I know what to do. And even though I was, you know, quitting my job, but a couple other things I want to note for this video. I was able to quit my job, because I'm incredibly blessed, and because I'm married to Haley, who also had a job, which she kept. So she kept a job that was able to pay for our entire lifestyle, right? So in theory, I built in, you know, sometimes some people like not having a safety net. I think when you're responsible for multiple people, a safety net's probably a good thing. And so we had a safety net of all of our expenses being covered by her job. And you might think, wow, she made a whole bunch of money. Not really. We just didn't have a whole lot of expenses, right? And that's, you know, one of the biggest daggers for everybody, is that people graduate college and they go get a new car, which makes me want to cry. And then they get a job and they're like, now we can go on vacation or whatever. And, you know, I bet you nobody will hear this and actually like really hear what I'm saying here. But we basically delayed that, the whole like, you know, getting cars, doing whatever you want, whatever. We basically delayed that for 2 years, which to some people might seem like a lot, and other people it's like not that much, right? We delayed that for 2 years, and now we can do all of those things, except for it has no detriment to our life, and we have financial freedom, right? We can do whatever we want. And it just took that little bit of delay. And the problem is nobody delays that stuff, that little bit of time, and or nobody's told to do that. And so they just screw themselves over. So, you know, I had an old 2009 Prius that I bought off of grandma that a lot of you guys have probably seen. They got me to and from work, you know, got 50 miles a gallon. I drove almost 3 hours every day in commutes. Never had an issue. The air conditioning didn't work for most of that time, so I was really hot, but I don't know. That's just how I am. We had that, and then on our house hack, we Airbnb'd the other half of our house, and it paid for our entire mortgage. So, you know, house and car, it's the two biggest expenses that people have. We didn't have it. Like it literally didn't exist. There was no car payments, and our house payments were covered. So by, again, you know, incredibly blessed, but by being able to do that, we eliminated the stronghold that like jobs have on you, right? Where it's like, I hate my job. I want to leave my job, but I can't because I can't afford my life. Like we didn't have that. It was covered with just a little bit of money, and that gave us the flexibility to do it. And you know, it sucks because I think there's so many people that could do these things, but they just immediately jump off on the wrong foot, and then it's just so freaking difficult to backtrack after the fact. Which is why I'm so passionate, especially about talking to people that are around my age that like haven't blown it yet, like that still have a chance to do that. But anybody can, it's just harder, you know, later in life. So that was why I was able to quit without ever having made money. You know, people think it's crazy when I say that, like I quit and I hadn't really made any money, but it's not as crazy when you see the situation, right? It's like, okay, well, in my head, the potential was limitless, right? Like I had the potential to do whatever I wanted, and I was going to take a shot at creating, you know, the dream life that we wanted, because I felt like it was actually possible, right? It had become possible. And so that was why we were able, as the plane flies over us, that's why we were able to pull it off in the beginning. But I didn't have a game plan. Like I really did not have a game plan. I had the two things I was trying, which was the transactional lending and then the wholesaling of properties. And I ended up leaning pretty heavily into the wholesaling of properties for a while. Met Houston BK, my wholesale partner, on that first trip to Phoenix, and best partner ever. We had an awesome little business going. We hired multiple people, kind of learned how to hire and host trainings and meetings and whatever, and it was awesome. So I met Houston, got started in the wholesaling thing, learned how to hire people, learned how to fire people a little bit, just learned how to build teams, right? And it was awesome. And we made good money, more money than I had ever made. At first, we certainly were kind of in this stage of like, this is the greatest thing ever and we're gonna become rich, which is what I now refer to as uninformed optimism. But that didn't always last to be the case. And that brings me to my point about, you know, I've mentioned this before, but push first pivot, right? I can make a whole video about this, but push first pivot. The idea is when you get to a hard point, are you going to decide to push through it, or are you going to decide to pivot? And the way that I've learned to look at those things is in making the determination, pushing is the thing that people don't do, right? People always, when things get hard, want to jump to the next thing, which obviously not the move most of the time, especially with things like entrepreneurship that are hard. So the idea behind push first pivot is that the only real time to pivot is if your fundamental beliefs about the thing you are doing have changed, right? And so at first, when I was doing the wholesaling, you know, when it got really hard, we pushed because it was like, this is supposed to be hard because we have the ability to make a bunch of money. So we got to push through it. And that lasted for months. I mean, we did it for months. We had months where we would make over $50,000, you know, gross revenue, and take home, you know, a decent amount of money. But it also was very tough. It was a lot of work, a ton of stress, and what ended up happening was a combination of things with the wholesale. But one of the biggest ones was a pivot moment for me where my fundamental beliefs about wholesaling creative deals, what I believed to be true, was not true. I discovered my fundamental beliefs were incorrect, right? And so I reached the point where it's like, oh, this push concept now makes sense to move to a pivot concept because the fundamental beliefs have changed. This is not what I thought it was. And so that was kind of strike one with the wholesale. But the bigger thing I want to bring up is that just like on the whim on the last trip in May, in January of 2024, I was invited to just a small little mastermind, like 6 dudes, maybe 8 dudes. I think it was 6, but not a lot of people, a small little mastermind out in Phoenix. And I wasn't going to go because we had a lot of other things going on. But again, it was like I was kind of at a pivotal point in the business, needed to be around other people. So made the decision to send it and go to Phoenix again. Common theme there. And when I got out there, you know, basically the whole thing we did was we were just sitting down, breaking down each other's businesses and giving each other third person perspectives, which is really important because sometimes things can be so obvious, but you just don't see them when you're right in the moment, right? And so at that mastermind, among, you know, a bunch of great things, we sat down and looked at my business. And at this point, you know, I've been wholesaling for maybe 6 months or so, but I had also been building up my lending for the next 6 months. And here's the big thing that I kind of realized on that weekend with the help of those guys. Scalability is an incredible tool in business. And what I realized is, you know, when you talk about scale, it's the ability to make more and more money with like the same amount of effort, right? Or less even. And so with wholesale, no matter what we did, every deal we found was basically the same profit. It was like $5,000 to $10,000. And so if we wanted more deals, we needed to either, you know, hire more people or do more work, or get better at what we were doing. And so there is obviously a level of scale to that. But what I learned with lending in this time, like right at this exact time in January 2024, was that I could do one lending deal and make $500. I could do one lending deal and make $50,000. And the amount of work I did would be the exact same, like literally the exact same. And that was an insane realization of scale. And so when we sat down, there's a couple things we talked about. One of the obvious ones was that I was making more money in my lending business than in my wholesale business, but I was spending 90% of my time in my wholesale business, like an idiot, right? Doesn't make any sense, but it was just, I was so locked in on working with my partner and my team and doing this stuff that I didn't realize that it made no sense. And, you know, I had thought about it a few times in my head, but I was, you know, what I said was, what would I do if I stopped wholesaling? Because I spend so much time wholesaling and lending takes up such little amounts of my time that, like, what would I do if I get rid of this thing that's basically how I spend, you know, 60 hours a week or whatever. And so that was my first fear. But the guys basically just, you know, we put it on a whiteboard, and it was like, hey, you make way more money doing this in way less time. Don't be an idiot, right? And that mixed with that understanding of leverage was the kind of the final straw where I was like, you're right. I need to stop wholesaling and I need to lean into this other thing that, you know, I've gotten good at, I make good money at, and not a lot of people do. So it's like a pretty unsaturated, I don't know if that's a word, but market, right? And so I did. So that was the turning point. And to be quite honest, I have no idea if and when I would have made that decision had I not had those people blatantly tell me to do so, because I just, whatever I do, I want to give it 100%, and it's really hard to shift out of things. But having them tell me that, and at that same time period was when that pivot was occurring, where I was realizing what I believed about creative wholesaling was not true. That was kind of, you know, all the straws being put together there. So January 2024 is when I started, you know, backtracking on the wholesale, and then, you know, probably by the next month I was completely out of it. And then I was kind of faced with this weird position where I had like 60 hours a week back, right? And my lending business was doing well, but it didn't really take that much time. And so I was like, I don't know what to fill this time with. And I started by trying to fill it with YouTube, just like trying to make my stuff better. I don't know if I did that, but I tried. And then I just tried to use the time kind of like I did the year before to just learn more stuff. And what I was learning was just like different types of lending, how to get into more lending, how to try and scale the lending business that I had. And very serendipitous, and, you know, definitely, again, I attribute a lot of things to luck and timing and things like that. But in that time period, February, and then into March of 2024, I follow Alex Hormozi very closely. And I'm very, very interested in business and you know, the business side of lending, but also business in general. And he partnered up with a company called Skool, which a lot of you guys have heard me talk about at this point. And, you know, it was one of those things where, like, I didn't really know what he was talking about, and I didn't know what I would do on there. But when somebody that I respect and appreciate as much as somebody like Alex Hormozi says that this is the best way to go, I wouldn't say I blindly listen, but I kind of blindly listen. And that was what happened. It was like, it was something where I had just perfectly freed up like more than a full-time job's worth of time. And this thing had just landed in my lap. It was like, hey, here's this new thing that I think is a really good idea for you to go do. And I basically was just like, all right, cool. So I made a community on Skool, and I called it Financial Foundations because I really enjoy finance. I didn't know what I was going to talk about, and I documented this whole journey, so a lot of you guys have seen it, but I didn't really know what the group would be about. But to backtrack for a second, at that mastermind, people said, what's your actual goal? And I put right up on the whiteboard, I have video of it somewhere. I said, my goal is just to speak on stages and teach people what I know. Like, I love talking in front of people and helping people. And honestly, without even realizing it, Skool became that platform for me to do exactly that. So I now had this group that I had built, and, you know, very quickly I realized that people didn't want to learn finance from me, even though that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. People wanted to learn lending because not many people were lending, or at least not successfully. And so I just started filling up this free community of people with people that wanted to learn from me, from lending. And that gave me the ability to start hosting like webinars and Zooms, which, by the way, is so awkward if you've always been on the receiving side, to all of a sudden have like a bunch of people just staring at you with their microphones off while you talk. Like, it's a weird feeling, but obviously very, very good growth. And so I just started building that free community. And And then as I was building it, you know, there's this competition that they were doing for who could make the most money on the platform. And the top 10 people got to have a private mastermind with Alex Hormozi, who again is like my all-time number one, you know, person that I look up to in the business realm. And so, you know, within a month, I built up this free community, and then I built a paid one where I really took kind of the information from the free one and went into implementation and real like community building. And in that month, I was able to actually win the competition, which is insane. It was a worldwide competition. I think I was one of 2 people out of the top 10 that was from America. So most everybody was from like England, Dubai, all over the place, all over the world. And then there was me, and somehow, you know, I could tell the story forever, but I won it. And so, you know, everything that was a couple months ago, and everything since then has just been honestly ridiculous. I mean, the momentum from it has been insane, both financially, lead flow, building my business, the connections that I've made. You know, I got to spend a whole day with the CEO of Skool, Sam Ovens, and a whole day with Alex Hormozi, and the other people that were involved. And now at this point, you know, I would say over the last couple months, like our income has probably doubled each of the last like 3 months, if not more, which is crazy. I get it. Like it's psycho to say that. But here we are a year later, right? A year later from quitting my job. And, you know, the point of this video that I wanted to make is like, so many people quit when they're this close. And I hate it, because I still feel like I kind of am, but I always felt like I could be the person to show people like, hey, you don't have to be that like guru way down the road that makes millions of dollars. Like, this is possible for anybody. And, you know, as I'm sitting here talking about this, you know, breaking huge months, like it was a year ago that I quit my job. So I'm not that far ahead, but the problem is, even for me now, I think people look at it and just tell themselves they can't do it. Like they tell themselves, oh, they're too far ahead or whatever. When the reality is, first of all, people are trying to measure their success on just way too short of a time frame. Like I'm thinking in years and 10 years, right? And people are thinking in like days and weeks. And so, I mean, I've had people, you know, that have tried to learn lending, and then they give up and move on, and they're like, oh, you know, I didn't have success. And, you know, they did it for a month or 2 months. And it's like, there's not really anything else I can say to show people what it looked like for a year for me to not make any money and just do the work. But like, that is the differentiator, is just doing the work, and people just aren't willing to do that anymore. But if you are, like, it can be insane. And the fact that, you know, we're in, I think it's, yeah, the first day of August, right? So this is month 7. This is 7 months since I made the decision to stop wholesaling and lean into lending. And since then, I'd have to, you know, look at the numbers, but I probably 5x'd my income since then. We have the ability to travel, as you can see. I'm on the top of a mountain in Big Bear Lake, California right now, which is insane. And we have the ability to travel everywhere. My wife's been able to leave her job to work with me now. And I mean, frankly, we're kind of living the dream. But, you know, I made this point at the very beginning of this video, like, it's because we were set up for success, and I'm grateful, probably, if not very lucky, right, to not have made those stupid decisions that everybody pushes you towards at the beginning of life, with buying new things, getting stuff you can't afford, being obsessed with material stuff. Like, this is the most fun I've had. Just, you know, I'm sitting in my camping chair on the top of this mountain, you know, camping, and like not spending any money. But we have the ability to do this now, and like, I know there's people watching this that want the ability, whether it's to do this or go travel to Europe or, you know, coach your kids' little league team. Like, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's not like, to have success in a shorter time frame, you have to be willing to sacrifice stuff. Like, I sacrificed, you know, some of my favorite things. I mean, I've barely gone surfing, you know, my favorite thing to do. I barely, you know, went out and like played sports. We didn't go out to dinner. Like, we haven't done that stuff for the last 2 years. And, you know, most people are like, oh, you're wasting your 20s or whatever, which is great. I'm glad that they feel that way, but I would venture to say they probably wouldn't feel that way if they saw how we're living now. And that's just because we chose to delay a little bit longer. right? That gratification. And so that's really it. I didn't have like a major point to this video other than I think the biggest thing I want to push is just like the compound effect is insane. And I know very few people that push far enough to make it to the point where they hit that compound effect. I also think that people have a very unrealistic idea of what hard work looks like, right? You know, I've shared this example a couple times, but I had somebody in my community come to me and saying they were doing, you know, X amount of outreach and weren't getting enough leads. And then they met this other guy in the group that was having success. And it turns out that he was literally doing 10 times the amount of work. And it was just a reframe for that guy of like, oh, I'm not, you know, what I thought was hard work is not hard work. And that's very normal. Like people are convinced that they should be able to, you know, just go sit at a desk for 8 hours and only work, you know, 3 of those 8 hours. And then somehow they're supposed to have this magical life. Like that's not how it works. Normal work produces normal results, and normal results is working for 40 years and then retiring on some crappy income and whatever. And if, you know, I like very intentionally choose to do everything abnormally for that reason. Like if somebody says that's weird or you shouldn't do that, I might heed it a little bit, but like, screw it. I'm going to go do that thing because I don't want normal. Like normal is not no bueno. I don't want that stuff. So that's really it for the video. I just wanted to make this as kind of my 1 year update. I'm really appreciative to all the people that have contributed over the last couple of years, the people I've met. Also, you know, I feel like I'm rambling now, but just know that like as you progress in life, you are naturally going to progress through communities and friend groups as you elevate yourself. And in my opinion, that's totally okay. And I think it's actually a measure of the progress that you're making. Because if you're progressing and the people around you are not, then you're either going to be held back by them or you're going to jump to the next group, community, whatever, to continue to go on that upward trajectory. And that's what you got to do. Like you got to be willing to make those sacrifices and push. So yeah, to close it out, you know, not allowing lifestyle creep and making sacrifices for what I would consider to be a short period of time, a couple years, can change the rest of your life. And not only your life, but the life of the people around you. Like, you know, when you pull this off and become this successful version of yourself, like you can help your family, you can help other people, you can have more time freedom to do all those things, and monetary freedom to do it too. So, yeah. That's the video, 1 year update. I appreciate all of you guys that have been hanging out. I always want to try and improve my YouTube, improve the things that I teach, give as much stuff as I can away for free. I love doing it, and I just hope that I get to continue to. I don't even hope I get to continue to. I'm going to continue to. So thank you to all of you guys. I'll see you next week.